What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brainwashed to be Broke, the show that where we expose the lies that we've been taught since our young age, since we've been born, and what truly is possible. Because most people aren't stuck because they lack some type of talent or maybe some type of skills most of the time. They are stuck because they were trained to believe certain way and hold these beliefs holds them where they are. And today we are here with another amazing guest. Her name is Vicki Hagadorn, and she is a mindset coach. Basically, she's helping people to through grief recovery, and she's really amazing, and she really wants to understand and help you. She went through a lot of those problems herself, and she rebuilt her life from that and took it as her advantage to help other people. So I'm really, really pumped to have her here and study her journey and how she get into entrepreneurship and so on. So welcome to the show, Vicki Hagadorn. And we're gonna start with first question because for those who don't know you and never heard of you from the audience, who actually Vicki are and what people know you for?
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor to be here. I'm Vicki Hagadorn, and I grew up in California, not too far from Los Angeles, and I now live in Texas, in Austin. So my journey started, I grew up in a home. My dad worked hard. He worked in the motion picture business, so he was never home. But he worked really hard and he supported me and my sister and my mom. And I just kind of grew up around a lot of alcohol and drugs and very little parental oversight. So it was a recipe for anything went and a lot went. So there was a lot of struggle, and I was sharing with you, by the age of 26 I got sober
Mhm,
from alcohol
mhm.
and any kind of drug that I was doing.
Right, right.
But I had developed a pretty severe eating disorder that would be something that I would wrestle with for 10
Wow,
years. That was very
wow.
debilitating, and a lot
Mhm.
of therapy. So I was living two lives. Nobody had any idea on the outside what was happening on the inside. I was very good at covering it up. I,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah,
I,
we as humans, we are that way, right?
yes.
Hiding these things. Yeah, I get it completely. Yeah, please continue. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had a lot of therapy, tens of thousands of dollars of therapy,
Mm,
that was helpful. I think it helped me to stay alive, honestly, but it didn't really ever get to the root of
mhm,
what was happening, why I had such a self-sabotaging behaviors and life. And
mm,
I, I believed that in order to be successful, you had to work really hard. That's what my dad
mhm.
did. You worked
Yep.
really hard because that's how you made money. And I didn't really know that I was on an entrepreneurial journey, but out of
Mhm,
high school, I started doing hair. I got my certification in hair, and I started working, and I was going to do hair while I went to college because I wanted to do psychology. I wanted to help people and I wanted to do that. And I ended up working, making good money, building a clientele, all the while like really struggling with addictions that nobody knew. And because I
mhm.
started doing hair at 18 and started building. So I didn't really
So,
realize
so
until
at that
later.
time, hold on. What
Yeah.
at that time when you found the, was it something for like when you found, hairstyling and so on, like what was it for you actually at that time? Was it some type of escape that you used to like, like be like trying to do something different to shift the way that you've been or like living, or what how did you get from, just to start doing some type of like hairstyling and so on?
Well, interestingly, my dad noticed that I did all my friends' hair, right? And when I got out of school, I wanted to take a year off and
Mm-hmm.
party. To be honest, I wanted to just
Yeah.
hang out. And my
Yeah.
dad said, absolutely not. If
Mm,
you're either going to go to school or you're going to get a trade, you're going to learn a trade. And I'm very, very grateful for that direction that he gave me, because to me, that seemed like the easier route. And I sort of was a natural. And so I just started doing hair. And I didn't really realize for a long time that I was building a business. And I did hair
mm.
for 28 years, and
Oh my
building
gosh.
that business, learning service, learning clients. I wanted to do psychology and didn't realize that I was being a psychologist without a degree, because that's, people tell your hairdresser and your bartender everything. And so I was learning a
Mm,
lot of life skills and a lot of people skills during that
mhm.
time of building a clientele. And
Very
it was
interesting.
in that time, that when I was 30 something, that my parents were going through a divorce, and I was
Oh.
married, and I was sober. I had been sober for 10
Mhm,
years at that point. And I was sober and I wasn't living at home, but my parents' divorce rocked my world. Like, we were a very
mhm,
tight-knit family, and
mhm,
I am the oldest daughter, and it was my job to like hold it all together. And I didn't know how to manage. All I knew is I had been 8 years free from my eating disorder at that point, and I wasn't going to go back to my old ways of coping.
mhm,
And
mhm,
that's when I found somebody reached out and said, I think grief recovery would help you. And my first response was, I
mhm.
don't need that. I'm not, no
Yeah.
idea that I was grieving. And I went to a meeting to learn about what it was, because I felt like this could really help my husband. So I dragged him.
Mm,
I said, I think this would be good, because I'm always trying to figure out what everybody else needs. I went to this meeting and I heard this and I never forgot it. And now I teach it. But unresolved grief is conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior. And I
mhm,
realized I've been grieving my whole adult life. And in all the therapy
mhm,
that I did, and I had a lot of them, 5 different therapists at different times. And no one ever did we talk about unresolved grief. We never addressed it. We always talked about the behavior. It was always focusing on a changing of a behavior. And that is very limiting. It is not deep
mhm,
healing. It's not. And I could not believe the difference in my life in 8 short weeks of taking this course. And it's not just a course, it's coaching. It's like you're working with someone, but you're going through steps. And as soon as it was over, I knew something massively had changed in me, because it had affected my ability to be present, my ability to have boundaries, my ability to know what I was feeling in the moment. Like, I was never able to do any of that.
mhm,
And even though I had a lot of recovery under my belt, I wouldn't say that I had a lot of healing under my belt. And that
mhm.
is when, as soon as I got done with that, I went to the institute and got certified
When
and have
when
been
did
doing this
you
since.
yeah, when did you first like when it comes to the feeling and all of that, like, that you felt that there is something not working well for you and so on, when happened that realization for you actually, like when did you figure out that you have to do something different for yourself to actually like get out from that pain and so on?
I think when my parents were getting divorced, and I had healed enough and I knew enough, like, I'm not going to go back to the things that I used to.
Mhm.
One of the things that we teach in grief recovery is that we go to things for short-term relief. And those are
Yep.
things like alcohol or drugs or
Yep.
whatever. The list is endless, the things that we go to for short-term relief. And I didn't want to go to the things that I had gone to. And I knew that I did not have the tools. I said, I do not know how to do this differently. I don't know how to
Mhm.
process this is a huge traumatic thing that's happening in my life. And I didn't know where to go or how to handle
Mhm.
it. And so I would say that that was the defining kind of moment for me of finding these tools and learning this
Mm,
process. If
how did it
that's
make you feel actually at that time? Like, have you been like completely confused? Why is that, or what did it actually do to you?
Oh yeah, like a bottom, a bottom. Like
Yeah. Wow.
I actually, I got sick. Because another thing
Mm,
that I've learned, and if you're in this world, you've probably heard that the body keeps the score. Um,
yep.
and what happens is our body will hold this and it will manifest in our bodies. So what ended
Mm,
up happening at that time is I got adult onset asthma and I wasn't breathing. I had this chronic cough. I was going to all these doctors and nobody could figure out what it was. They were giving me all these different things. And I went to this Chinese medicine doctor that did acupuncture and he told me lungs are in Chinese medicine grief. And
mm,
I was really
mm,
sick, really sick. And I
wow.
remember even when he said that, I was like, oh, that's weird. Like it did not compute because I was so in denial that I was
Yep.
grieving. And I remember that process and I was extremely sick. And I was still working and going, showing up for my clients but I was it didn't seem like I was going to get any better. And it was that's what because I am the kind of person that I'm a go
Yep.
person, checking off the list, keeping busy, and I was not able to. All I could do was literally breathe. I had nights that I did
Mhm.
not think I was going to wake up in the morning because I could not get
Wow.
air and I did not have inhalers. I was having full
Yep.
blown asthma attacks without an inhaler because I didn't know. And I ended up in the emergency and there was a doctor there that just said, "Have you ever been tested for asthma?" And I said,
How
"No."
old
And
you were at that time?
I was 36, 36.
36. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Oh,
Yeah.
smokes. Okay. So when what did even why that even happen? Like why did you even start with, you know, that habit of, what you experience, and so what is the reason behind it? Was it something that the school, like the whole environment that you were in, like with those people around, or like what have you been looking for actually that led you to that place?
You mean like when I was using alcohol and my eating
Mhm,
disorder?
mhm, mhm.
Well, I would say it was growing up. I feel for girls, young girls now when you have these phones and all that you're exposed
Yep.
to. We were exposed to things, I think that just growing up in a world, first of all, I was around it a lot. There was a lot of drugs and
Mhm.
alcohol that I had
No,
access to. I mean,
that's the programming, right? That's the
yeah,
programming that is happening right there. Like
yes,
people have to know I'm spending, like, if you are not the creator, you are the consumer. Like in every area, it doesn't matter
yes.
what it is. Like look at around, like literally you find everything everything is made by purpose. There is nothing for just no reason. You know what I mean?
Yes. And consuming gives us it puts us in such a depressed state and people are sitting here
Yep.
all day consuming and not creating. It's the opposite. You can't
Hmm.
create when you're in that mode. And so I think that that's just something and I went to a place where I I had an incident that happened and I didn't know how to handle it and I used food and I threw up the food to control my emotions. And
Hmm.
that made me feel like I had some control, this false sense of
Hmm.
control. And then that
Hmm.
became a way of life for me for a long time. Like it felt like being trapped in your own mind in a jail, like that there's no getting out
Hmm.
of. And it was very dark. I was I'm very I didn't end up having to go into a hospital like where I stayed, but I was in like more of an outpatient where I was seeing a therapist every week and I don't know, I feel like I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I didn't grow up going to church, but I can look back and see God was in all of it. In all of it. I actually started going to church when I was 28. I was 2 years sober, and that's where I met my husband, and so my journey was already on a journey of recovery, and I was searching for that because I found that in the places that I was going for recovery, I found wanting. I found I wasn't really seeing
Ooh,
people that I
yeah,
wanted their
yeah.
life.
That's so
I was,
beautiful. I love it.
yeah, and I wanted more. I felt like there's got
Yeah.
to be more to life than just staying sober. That's a big
Mm,
deal. And it was a
yeah.
definite starting point. And I do believe, and I'm sober today. I'm January 21st, 1992. I got sober. So 32. I don't know. I have to count. But I've been sober most of my life. And I never plan to go back. I would never give up living free of that. But it got to a point where I felt like there's more. It's like, I'm not going to live in this kind of white knuckling behavior modification because I still wasn't free from the eating disorder, and I certainly wasn't free from the bad thoughts that I had about
Mhm.
myself, the insecurity and the poverty mentality. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Like really living from always behind, always feeling not enough, always feeling that was not helped when I got sober at all.
Yeah, yeah, no.
That was just the
Okay.
beginning.
So what did you have to do then? Like, because you said that there are multiple different, paths to like that can help, but like the one that helped you was actually, by the grief recovery basically method, right? And you mentioned that there are different methods, but they are not really going deep enough, right? They are going like that is just scratching the surface level. Why is even that, like, why what is the reason why the grief recovery is going so much deeper than just staying on the surface level?
I love that question. Well, in the last probably 6 or 8 years, I've really gotten into mindset and changing
Mm-hmm.
mindset. And I think that mindset matters tremendously. But I believe that,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I believe that the mindset sits on something deeper. And if someone has unresolved
Mm-hmm.
grief or loss or trauma, then your nervous system is wired for survival, like deep down inside. And so when you're in survival mode, you can't build a thriving life. You're kind of in
Mm-hmm.
a crisis management mode on an emotional level even. And so I think that what happens is there is a way that when you are able to kind of heal the deeper stuff, because a mindset and new beliefs and new thoughts are going to go on top of that. And when
Mm-hmm.
things happen, this is going to be where you respond from. So healing
Mm-hmm.
this and then putting this on is a very different outcome. That was the game
Mm-hmm.
changer for me. And it took me years to heal, the deeper. And I think, there's been a lot of incredible coaches that I've gleaned from over the last 10 years that have been about mindset and different things have been awesome. And then I just realized, oh my gosh, when you heal from the trauma, and I work with people from every kind of trauma, from childhood abuse, sexual trauma, satanic ritual abuse, to dealing with addictions, dealing with loss, dealing with losing children, like to death,
Mm-hmm.
losing spouses, obviously death, divorce, any kind of, like when we talked earlier about conflicting feelings caused by the end of a familiar pattern of behavior,
Yep.
that
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of things. A lot we go through a lot of endings in our lives, and we do a lot of talks on transition and how to get through transition because everything is a transition. Our daughter is in college now. It was a huge transition for us when she moved out.
Ooh.
We
Okay.
homeschooled
Yep.
and we were involved, and I still talk to her practically every day, but she's gone, not here. So every life transition is a grieving experience. And so when you learn the tools and you learn how to process those things in an emotionally healthy way, then what you can do is be more present where you are, whether it's a
Mm.
move, a job loss, a job change. I mean, it's endless, really.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to, because when it comes to that traumatizing and these type of things, basically, if you if you really think about it, isn't it actually like when you are a kid, for example, or like you are mother and husband, and you're basically raising a kid, isn't it actually the thing that, for example, like when you raising a kid and that something, for example, the kid doesn't like do something stupid and so on, isn't it actually like that you trying to traumatize the kid in some way to don't do this type of things? Isn't it that like is like that's how humans actually are most of the time shaped, right? Am I correct, or do you have
I
any different
I want to make
belief on
sure
that?
I understand that what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
Are you saying that a lot of times we are disciplined by our parents
Mm-hmm.
or as parents
Mm-hmm.
with fear or with something to discipline us into doing the right thing? Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Basically by traumatizing the
By yeah.
kid, right? Is that the way how most of the people and like how we are like trained based on this like the way that the world is set it up, or how is the world actually like in your perspective? How you can
Wow.
see how the
That's
traumatizing actually things are happening to
ah
us?
man, that's a very interesting question. I've never thought about that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that, I think unfortunately we're shaped by trauma a lot,
Mm-hmm.
whether it by loss, one of the first traumas that I had in my life growing up, I shared a bedroom with my sister and our room caught on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't home at the time, but we lost everything. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
coming home and everything in my life, my little world was in this charred pile in the front of on the lawn, and all of my clothes and stuffed animals and bed and games and and it was, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the smell. I'll never get, and we had to move out of the house and live in a hotel while it was being rebuilt. And
Did
there's
that have
times.
any did that have any effect on you into the future, that moment like that you experienced the fire in your room?
I think what it affected me was just kind of a fear of like nothing safe. Like anything could
Mm,
happen, you're not really
mhm.
safe anywhere, even though luckily we weren't hurt physically,
Yep.
but it kind of felt like, oh my God, like a fire came in and just took everything. And I think that it affected me in that way of
Mhm,
understanding that was like a pivotal time, it was a I think all these things that we go through in life, it is sort of transition because you grow up,
mhm,
you have to deal. And whether that's loss, whether it's, as a young child, my husband lost his mom as a young child,
mhm,
and that's hugely traumatizing. And his dad was very angry and took it out on him. So I think his dad did live under what you're thinking of is this is how I'm going to discipline and raise my son is by just there was no soft place to land at all. It was
mhm.
very harsh and very his dad was he was military, so there was, and I think that, it's funny that you bring up kids because I feel like one of our soft spots is working with couples because we
Mhm.
love working with parents because we feel like what we're
Ooh,
doing is really healing two generations at a time. Because if we can help
wow. Yeah.
parents heal, because what we learned to survive, we learned from the home we grew up in. And so
Mhm.
we are going to, unfortunately, repeat the patterns that we know. And
Yep.
so, or we're going to go the complete opposite,
Yep.
And so I, I know that when we had our daughter, I was set. She's not going to grow up in a house with addiction. Like it's
Mhm.
not happening. And she did not grow up in a house with addiction. And I'm so grateful that I found grief recovery before we had her, because then my mindset went from, I don't want her growing up in a home of addiction to, I want
Mhm.
her growing up in a home that's emotionally safe,
Yeah.
which includes freedom from addiction, but it's more proactive than reactive, or, it's sort of like coming from a place of abundance rather than a place of poverty, And I think
Yeah.
that it's a huge thing that as a parent, the best thing you can do is heal. And because
Mhm.
otherwise you can't show up. If you're a workaholic, my dad was never home. I never really knew my dad until high school
Mhm.
because he was never
Mhm.
home. And when he was home, he had a major drinking problem. And
Um,
there, I didn't really know him. And then when he came home, I didn't know him. And, we bonded over
mhm.
partying. Our household. So there wasn't a lot of talking about feelings or processing,
Mhm. Mhm.
So one of the first things that we do in a session is, how was grief handled in your home growing up? Like, were you told if you're
Mhm.
going to cry, go to your room? Or feelings even allowed? Was it
Mhm.
ever modeled for you how to hurt over something? Or were you told, oh, don't cry over the dog, we'll get another one? It's
Mhm.
amazing how easy it is to minimize. And it's so easy to minimize our kids because we minimize our own in order to survive. We learn
Mhm.
how to minimize our emotions in order to fit in order to survive. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's a powerful thing to undo, but it's amazing because when you see it, you just go, "Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this is what I've been doing." We get programmed to intellectualize our emotions in order to
Mhm.
survive. And you can't heal your heart with your head. You just can't.
Yep.
So I,
100%.
I, I love mindset coaching, and we do a lot of that, but we do the healing heart work first.
Mhm. So so the question now is what actually like the mindset coaching and the healing and everything, what does it mean to you? Like, is it something like you are passionate about completely, or like do you have any different values that you have like that are compared to that? Or yeah, share with us.
Hmm, interesting. I love your questions. I love what you're thinking. Um, I would say yes, this is definitely what I'm most passionate about. I think that I feel like this is something that everybody needs. We all as humans need to be able to grieve, to be okay,
Mhm.
to understand that that's okay, and to create safety, emotional safety in processing because unfortunately we're going to experience disappointment and we're going to experience loss. It's
100%.
it's guaranteed, and we're going to experience setbacks, and any kind of life journey that you're on is, you're going to hit forks in the road. We all know it's not about the
It's
destination,
all
right?
pain. It's all
It
pain.
is,
So you
yes.
should be better to choose something that you're gonna be like it's gonna be worth pain, like having the pain for.
Yes,
you know
definitely.
like, and I think that you found it. Like, you have something that you are super passionate about and you love doing it, and like this is the thing that I love to see, when it comes to other people and studying and talking to other people. And it's just beautiful to see what is possible when it comes to humans, like, you or other people that I've been interviewing. And it's like, it's yeah, just like how I can help you to get even more upfront of those people, because like I'm so with you and I would love to, like, you are doing something amazing there. And there is so many people that need your help 100%.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just so beautiful. So um, when it comes to your passions, aside of that, I heard from you also that you would like to more travel and so on, like with your daughter now. And like, when she is like, you said after she will finish the school, or like in the between or so on, like share a little bit of that with us.
Sure. Yes. Well, it's interesting because up until 2020, I did all my coaching in person, and we
Mm-hmm.
did groups and we did, in person. Then 2020 hit, and amazingly, the Grief Recovery Institute decided to do certification online in about 2019. So there was kind of an awareness, I guess we didn't even realize, but so we really started to shift things to going online, really just so we could reach more people. Then
Mm-hmm.
2020 hit, of course, everything was online. So
Yep.
if I could go back, I would have invested in Zoom or, one of these kinds of things back then, because who knew it was about to be everywhere. And platforms like this, we didn't really have a lot of this before.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that we get to work with anybody anywhere. And now I've gotten to work with clients all over the world in different,
Mhm.
way different time zones in 8 hours ahead or behind, and we can make it work. And so that is our dream, is when our daughter graduates, that we can travel with her and we can do clients from wherever we are. My husband became certified and we work together. He also does grief recovery like I do, and we do a lot of work together, working with, especially with couples. We do a lot of that kind of work with couples. So he can work with a husband and I can work with a wife separately. And then we do a lot of things together, which has been amazing. And he works also a lot with young men, young
Mhm.
boys that are, just starting out in life and, learning these tools. I love working with young people and learning these tools at 18, 19. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so ahead of the game to learn these tools of, and it was really awesome. I worked with this woman and she had gone through a really bad divorce and the husband was very abusive to her and her kids. And I think they had
Mhm.
6 kids and their kids ranged all in age. And the older 3 were boys. They were in their 20s. And after she finished working with me, she recommended her son to work with my husband. And
Mhm.
she called me after their first session, and it makes me tear up every time because she said he said to her mom, I never knew that a man could be so kind. Just kindness, just
Mhm.
this is what we do, is we create a safe space. We have these um ah we have these commitments that we make at the beginning of each session, and those commitments are, we promise there is no judging, no minimizing, and no comparing. And this
Yeah.
place is an emotionally safe place for you to be honest. And it's 100% confidential, of course, but you're creating this place. And the difference, too, between this and kind of like a standard therapy is that we share a lot of our own life and our own journey in the
Mhm.
process, which is different than, therapy. And we're education. We're providing education. So it's coaching and education. So it's not under the umbrella of therapy. It's different. And so we have a little more flexibility. We are more open. And I think that what happens is it really sets a tone for people to feel, wow, you just shared these really hard things with me, and giving people permission, I think. And
Mhm.
it's very much about just giving them a space to connect to their emotional truth and be heard without judgment, without correcting them,
Mhm.
without telling them they shouldn't feel that way, or, giving them a pat
Yeah.
answer or a
Mhm.
verse like, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. If there's anything I could say here today, please never say that to anyone ever, ever, ever.
Mhm.
It's not biblical. It's not true. Everything that we experience is our worst, I think, trap, is to think that we can survive on our own strength. We can't.
Mhm.
We can't. Whether we go to God or have people in our lives, we've got to have support and help.
Yeah,
So
100%. Like, are you big in environment, like being in, around the right people because like that they can help you to grow also and they growing and like you support each other in the growth and so on. Because like this is one of the most important things, especially like when you are starting to do some changes in your life. Um, for me, it was like literally that was for me one of the breaking points because like I literally decided I'm gonna go from my country where I was living around people that didn't serve my purpose, and I just
mm,
literally decided to go away and change the whole environment, and I left the country myself by myself.
wow.
Nobody with me. I couldn't even speak English at that time, and it's literally 7 years ago. Um, and like that was the moment that I can say clearly and proudly that that was the determining moment that led me to this path and being able to be around people like you and other people and serve others. And yeah, it's just so amazing to see that one decision, how one decision can change everything. And I think it's like very, very similar to your situation when you decided to just, I'm done with suffering and done with
Yes.
all the things that I've been going through. I want to, my purpose in this world is way different than just that. And I'm going to be helping people do what I have, like get out from that space where I basically been for couple of years, or I don't know how long you've been actually in that space, and like look how big you could go and like how far you could go, sorry. um
Yes.
and it's just so beautiful. I love it, love, yeah, truly amazing. um and when it comes to um when it comes to your future, like what you can see, where you are heading with all of that, um with everything what you do, what you can see yourself doing like in a couple of years, basically, like uh helping people still do the same, or do you have like something that you want to change it a little bit, or do you can like what is it for you?
Yeah, I love that. Well, last year in September, my husband and I launched a coaching program for grief recovery specialists. So I definitely want to stay in that realm. I love working with clients. I think that's the most what I love the most. But I also love what's happened is as I've worked with clients over the years, I would say probably 1 out of 10 end up wanting to get certified. There's a lot of grief
Mhm.
recovery specialists out there. So people will get certain. I mean, they'll go through the program and then they go get certified. And the institute is amazing. And but then they don't have as much like hands-on help after you're certified, right? So then those
Yeah.
people end up reaching out to me for help, which
Mm,
I'm happy to
mhm.
help. But my husband kept saying, why don't you start a coaching program for all these people that end up calling you? And so we launched that in September of last year, and that has been amazing. And we're going to have an in-person conference in October, and we're in this process now, kind of like what you are. We've built all that out, and now we're just getting the word out, honing it. We do, 2 coaching calls a month. We do master classes. We're going to be going into doing interviews, but we haven't, what I'd love to do is spotlight certain specialists. We've got lots of plans, so I would love to grow that into a big, where we have that community where people can
Mhm.
really plug in and be surrounded by other people that are doing this work. Because when you are working with people at the hardest times of their lives, it takes an emotional toll. And so you
Mhm.
need to be able to also use the tools to decompress and to
Mhm.
so you want to connect, with other people that get it, that are in it.
Mhm.
And we had a meeting yesterday with 2 gentlemen that want to build out help for first responders in our area where we live here in Texas. And we met with a fireman and a policeman who are trying to build this out. And they got our name, and we met with them to build out a program for first responders, because when you're around
Nice.
trauma all the time, it's traumatizing. It is traumatizing for
Mhm.
that person. So I don't know. I feel like this year is just, it's poised. I feel like last year was a year of building a lot of foundation and, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Framework. Lots of
Yeah.
framework. And this is
Mhm.
going to be the year
Structure.
of scale.
So,
Structure. Yeah, great word. And this
yeah, I
is going
love
to
that
be the
word.
year of scale. Yes,
Mhm.
that's what I feel.
So powerful. So when it comes to, because you also mentioned that you have found a God along the way,
Mhm.
how God actually changed the way you've been seeing the world, if I may ask.
Oh, oh my gosh, it changed everything. Um,
Mm,
I would say that, well, the first scripture that I got exposed to my very first day going to church, I got invited to church. And the first scripture that I heard that day, it was preached on, it was 2 Timothy 1:7. And it says, for
mhm,
we were not given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline.
mhm,
And when I went to that service, I was 2 years sober, and I was still struggling with an eating disorder.
mhm,
And I remember looking around and thinking, is that possible? Is it possible that I have a spirit of self control? Because even in my therapy and in my meetings, I'm told that I don't. I'm told that I do not. I'm an addict. I will always be. I will always struggle with self control. I don't, I do
mm,
not. align with that. I don't receive that. And I remember hearing that passage and being like, wait a minute, wait, what? Like, and and in another version, it says we were not given a spirit of timidity or fear,
Mhm.
but of
Mhm.
power, of love, and of a sound mind. And so sound
Mhm.
mind and self-control are used, in depending on what version you're reading. And
Yeah.
I remember from that moment on just feeling like that is my goal because I don't really know what that feels like to have soundness of mind. And it is
Mhm.
very connected to self-control. And
Mhm.
so I would say that is a huge part, and that I think that gave me vision, gave me hope. It gave me hope from not just living a life where I'm not going to use. Like,
Yeah.
what? Like, that wasn't enough, That was like,
Yeah.
but it opened up, this whole world. And then to be truthful, when I went 2 years later, well, actually, it was a few more, 10 years later, when I went through grief
Mhm.
recovery and I was sitting in this session where there was no judging, no comparing, and no minimizing. I also then realized at that moment that that was actually the heart of God. And unfortunately, in a lot of churches, there's church hurt, there's people, there's legalism, there's a lot of things that come, that came in. And the healing of grief recovery made me understand God even more. Even though it's not necessary,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's not a Christian program per se. It's
Yeah.
not. But it will help because a lot of times we don't know what to do with our losses and our pain, and we blame God or we blame, and the process is so I believe it's the gold standard out there to help people with grief and loss. And so on the other side, you're able to have a new perspective, and you're able to kind of see, forgive God, forgive your dad, or forgive,
Mhm.
somebody who molested you, or, I mean, the gamut is big. And so that also really transformed my understanding of who God was. So
Mm.
those two
Do
times
you
were
do,
very
do
pivotal.
you do you implement God also into your grieving, like, program? Basically, that you are implementing it for some, like, or using it also inside of it, or is it like literally just like your more of like your stuff that that you value and so on?
In When I'm doing grief recovery with people, if somebody comes in and they're a Christian and they want to,
Mm-hmm.
pray or talk about God, but I do not bring that in. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason why it's so important that we don't is because there's a lot of people that have been very wounded by religion
Mm-hmm.
and by
Yeah.
legalism, and by people saying things like, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, or even growing up, I can't tell you how many people, like families that grew up with a pastor father who there's
Mm-hmm.
and it's so hard to reconcile,
Mm-hmm.
someone that's being a certain way on Sunday and someone that's being a different way at home,
Mm-hmm.
and the guilt and the shame, and it's so deep. So it has to be a safe place. Our number one priority is emotional safety. But what I've
Yeah.
seen, for me and for other people, is on the other side of the process, the healing that happens brings clarity. And so then we have an advanced program that we do, that we literally help people get their emotionally complete with God, if they've
Mm-hmm.
had wounding with, in their spiritual walk. So the coaching that we do after, if somebody wants to work with us, we do bring in more spiritually based, but it has to come from a place of healed, of having a place of that healing first, I believe,
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
ultimately.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it seems to me that, like, what you described, and like how you accepted God into, your life, that was being in line with God also, and like what you had to heal from. It literally, like, that was the biggest shift for you basically in your life, that completely
Mm-hmm.
changed the trajectory of your life. And it's so beautiful because when it comes to God and being in line with God, and I believe like I'm Christian too, right? And I love like talking about it and understanding what other people think about this topic, because it's so like there's so misunderstanding when it comes to, because somebody says something, and like they read it something and probably read it something different than I've been reading or something. Like it doesn't make any sense. Do you know what I mean? Like people are talking something like, even like with the money, uh you know basically they are saying that the money is all, root of all evil. That's not
Right.
true, right?
Mm-mm.
And so on, like, so it's like, are you guys reading the same book? Anyway,
Right.
but um have you bring God into your child life too, or
And
it's
my
just like,
daughter?
mm-hmm,
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. I mean, my daughter, luckily I had met my husband at church, so she did grow up in a Christian home,
I get it, okay,
So
okay,
we were part of church, and she also grew up in a home where we were very big on this tools we learn in grief recovery. So from a young age, she knew that it was safe to talk about her
mm-hmm,
emotions and feelings, and we didn't handle it. I definitely didn't handle it perfect all the time. And I remember her even talking to me once. My daughter is very smart. And I remember her telling me once, why can't you listen to me the way you listen to your clients? Why can't you put your GR hat on when you're talking to me? And I was like, oh, I'm so
that's
convicted
so
right
funny.
now.
Oh,
I just need to, because, I think that in parenting, obviously there's a place to correct but I believe that you get so much further when you listen and they're able to speak and say, and then there's correction. But you've got to build connection first. You've got to build that safety where they feel, and it was really awesome because I homeschooled my daughter, and it was just her and I mean, my husband was around, he helped us too, but I mean, there's no other children, right? And
mhm.
so, and we're very similar in our kind of in our temperament. So we definitely bumped a lot. And by the time she was graduating high school, she was kind of ready to go. She went away to college, and she wasn't too far. She was only an hour away, but it was when she was at school that she really saw, she was like, my mom, my friends don't have relationships with their parents. Like they lie, they're not honest, they don't talk to them. And she just figured, and of course we had our bumps and we had our arguments, and she was frustrated with me or whatever. But getting out and seeing the difference, because she knew
Mm,
whatever happened, she was always had her safe place here. And she
that's
really
good.
didn't
That's good.
understand it until she was out and seeing, and really seeing all of her friends. Like, I mean, her first year, she picked up a friend at a party that had been, somebody dropped something in her drink, and she had to rush her to the hospital. She took a friend to the hospital that was date raped in a car, and they were all struggling with addiction. And she just never wanted to do that. Like, she was like, and that's when I remember her saying, what is happening? Like, what? There's
Mhm,
Because there was so much, like, just not groundedness. And for
mhm,
her, she just felt like, this isn't what I want to do. I
mhm.
And it was kind of traumatizing, really, to
Yeah.
see and to experience. And I think it was a huge thing for her to kind of recognize, wow, you don't always have that place that you can go talk to your parents about things
Mhm.
and get and be heard and get sound advice. Like, okay, how are you feeling about that? Let's talk that through. What's coming up for you? I mean,
Do you think it's do you think it's based on the programming that we like, where we are coming from? Like, the place is basically, the world is designed this way, that human are like not really, usually they are not really great in communication and like, listening even, and like, they, it seems like like the whole world is basically designed to keep us uninformed, like don't do anything than what we told you to do, like be a good worker and so on, like
right?
all of that, like it's designed to it's designed you to do not think, basically,
Yes.
right? Don't be creative, don't be like, don't do different things than other people. do you think like that's one of the reasons like why, for example, relationship between your parents and like the kids, because the parents they don't understand it too, so like it's the way that, because I experienced pretty much the same thing, like my like relationship with my parents and so on, it was really tough when it comes to that. I never heard of them telling me they love me and so on, like so crazy.
Mm,
And
yeah.
my parents was always at work, was working super hard, so I've been like most of the time actually spending my childhood with my grandparents, because my grandparents been
Oh,
always home because they've been
right.
retired already, or they or their own business basically. um and yeah, so it was really difficult for me to understand, and like that was like one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about helping others and building this life completely different way and changing the trajectory for my future and for my family future and so on, like when it comes to legacy and so on. And yeah, so do you think that's one of the reasons, like the whole programming of the world, like keeping us like not really communicate properly with our like parents and so on, like what is the reason, what do you think?
100%. I do. I
Mm,
think that our schools have an agenda. We didn't put our daughter in schools because,
that's yeah,
my husband is a teacher. And when we had her, he said, she's not going to go to school. And I was like, what are you talking about?
that's
Like, what are you
crazy.
talking about? And he's like, no, I'm in this. I see it. And he teaches and speaks a lot on this exact topic. And our schools are designed to create a dumbed down electorate and a mindless consumer.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
So that's a quote
Oh
from his
my
book.
gosh,
so
yeah,
so
that's
that's
so powerful.
exactly a
So lit
dumbed
for
down
fire.
electric, yeah, and a mindless consumer. And so you're going to have people line up, around the corner for the latest iPhone, or you're going to
Mhm,
have, I also think that it's created for division, especially between the kids and their parents.
mhm,
And parents get the messaging. You're not an expert on your kids. We're the experts. We will take care of
mhm,
this. And you can
mhm,
see where it's going now, like what it's moving into. Even the experts are going to tell our kids what sex they are, and who, and it's going into even deeper. But I think that there is a definite agenda for dumbing down. We want to create workers. Back in my day, it was people that worked in cubicles. It was in the factories and it was in the cubicles. And
it's
now,
it's the same thing, even though I think like even
yeah,
these days like people are still programmed to these like cubicles, like
yes,
to just follow this path and don't be different, because like this is the safe path. And
yes,
yeah,
it's the
of course,
safe path.
mm,
Yes. And you
so
work all
crazy.
those years and then till retirement. And it's pretty crazy statistically how many people get sick not long after they're
Yeah.
retired because their whole life has been spent. And I think that there's been a huge shift, in that. I do. And I
Mhm.
think that, like, I have a lot of hope for this generation, for her generation. I
Mhm.
think that,
Yep.
there's a hunger. I think that they have a hunger to understand, even spiritually, like a real God, not
Mhm.
not a churchianity, not that, but a real God with a real spirit that lives inside, that gave you purpose and that you are
Yep.
created for something. And you don't have a spirit of fear, but you have a
Mhm. Mhm.
spirit that has great power and
Mhm.
you can do anything. And I think that, yeah, I think, that it has been an agenda, and I
Mhm.
think we're kind of coming out of it. I think that there's a lot happening in schools. I mean, colleges. It's frightening what's being taught, and
Like
not just the. I think that the education is subpar to say the least, but even the culture and the really mind control and the things that are
yep.
happening. So
100%.
yes, and I
So
think,
crazy.
yeah,
Like even now with the AI and everything, like how the technology, like it's insane,
it
like what
is.
is happening, and people are still in the school basically they are teaching how to do presentation in PowerPoint. Holy
Right.
shit,
Right.
bro, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I can see it because like my girlfriend, brother, he is literally studying this in his
Like
school, in
business.
high school. And I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh,
You're like,
that's gonna
dude.
be hard fall on the face. I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you right now, like you're gonna
Yeah.
get to your life and you have no clue what is going on. You have no money literacy, like financial literacy is zero. And like people, I don't know, but it seems like to me that people still think that somebody else is going to take care of them, or so. I don't know. Like
Mm.
it seems like most of the people being literally programmed that the government gonna take care of them. Oh, like, that's like we are not in a socialist country. We are in literally a capitalist country where people are have to take care of themselves. Nobody gonna take care of you. Take the
Well, they're
responsibility,
trying to make
literally.
it that, yeah.
They're trying, but what's gonna happen with those people when it comes to saving money and they don't understand money? What's gonna
Right.
happen when like when socialists, like if we're gonna turn the country, like US, if we would turn into socialist country, what's gonna happen with the currency? Literally disappear.
Mm-hmm.
It won't have value because everybody gonna get the same amount.
Right. Isn't that
Right?
crazy?
So literally everybody who's saving money now on trying to get money or like whatever, or keeping money on account or putting them into bonds and all of that. Anyways, like this is another rabbit hole we can go
I
because like
know.
money,
This is
I'm
another
studying money
episode.
so deep because like I want to understand this is the currency that we are operating with. Banks, everybody. So like for me it's like this is really important like to understand. But anyways, like yeah.
My
Oh
husband does a great thing in his class. He teaches high school. He teaches
yeah.
part-time at a awesome classical model school, incredible school. And but what he'll do is he'll do a little he'll say, okay, let's say you get an A on your test and all
Mm-hmm.
year you know you've been working hard and studying, and then this guy over here is like barely getting a D, but at the end we're going to share. So you're going to get a C so that that guy can get a C. And they're just like, what? Yeah. Hello. That's kind of not fair, right? kind
Yeah.
of and who does that incentivize? Nobody.
Mm.
You're not
Mm.
incentivized to try, and you're certainly not incentivized to try harder because
Yeah.
it's just going to get handed to you in the end. And but I think that it's great for, you got to speak in those languages, right, where people can feel that. And I thought that's really brilliant because they're just like, oh heck
Mm.
no, we worked really hard for this. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was a amazing and hour interview. I appreciate you. That was literally like I enjoyed talking to you. I have a three rapid fire question that I'm asking most of the
Okay.
people when we are wrapping up. So the first one is, what is one book that you would recommend anybody who is starting out that completely changed your life?
Oh, I would say the book that popped right into my mind right away is by Viktor Frankl, and it's a book called Men's Search for Meaning.
Very cool.
Incredible
Okay,
book.
I will check that book too because I
Viktor
haven't I haven't
Frankl.
mhm,
And yeah, it's a life-changing book. He survived Holocaust, and he
mhm,
went on to create a therapy called logotherapy. And
mhm,
his belief was that what motivates man is purpose. And
mhm.
it's phenomenal. It is a life-changing book. I taught
Very cool.
when my daughter was in high school and we were homeschooling. I taught our little homeschool community. We had about 100 kids. It wasn't that little, but the high school class was about 20. And I taught a psychology, and I taught the psychology book. And then I spent 6 weeks on that book, and I spent 6 weeks on the grief recovery method. And that was our
Mm,
psychology, and it was awesome. So I would say
very
Man's
cool.
Search for Meaning by Victor.
Awesome. So, and the second question is, if you could delete one piece of advice from the internet forever,
Oh,
what would you delete?
dang, that's a good question. I think the advice would be um any teaching around that you are to rely on your own strength. there's a lot of different ways that that's taught. And I think that anytime that we're taught that it's different, it's an empowering, but it's
Mhm.
also very limiting because our own strength is limited. And I think that there that what comes up a lot of times can be, I know that that is something that I did for a long time. And I went on that for a long time. In fact, we're getting ready to do a webinar. We do a free webinar every month on a topic that is about grief. And this topic is going to be called Grieving the Person I Had to Become in Order to Survive. And I think that a lot of my survival was on my own strength. And it takes you so far, but usually you crash and burn. So I would say any kind of teaching on that, on self reliance, would be what I would say I don't agree with.
And the last one would be, if this interview would be the one you've ever done, what would be the message that you would love to leave behind you for the other generations?
Oh, um, the message. I believe that my message would be that you're never a lost cause, that there's always hope, and that no matter what you've been through, that healing is possible, and that you have a purpose for being here, and that you are needed. Your voice, your everything about you is needed in this world, and you can overcome.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Where people can find you? Do you have some platform, or do you have a website?
Yes. Yes, you can find us at freedomfromgrief.com. We have a website there. You can learn all about what we do, what our coaching is. You can learn about our specialist coaching, which is the coaching that we do for grief recovery specialists. All that is there. Learn about our webinars that we do. And yeah, and we're on Instagram, Freedom from Grief. I'm pretty sure that's what my handle is, at Freedom from Grief. And yeah, those are the main places.
Thank you so much. And for
My
everybody who's
pleasure.
listening, we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Adam.